And I'm going to break off from this story now because this is very important breaking news. The Sun tomorrow on its front page will have...
A last-minute decision has just sent shockwaves across the United Kingdom. In a live broadcast, originally meant to be hosted by King Charles, Camilla made a sudden solitary appearance to deliver a public apology to Catherine. Never before has a reigning queen humbled herself so deeply before the entire nation. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Leaked developments reveal that it all began when Catherine became the target of a highly orchestrated smear campaign, fueled by classified documents. The moment Prince William discovered the evidence was entirely fabricated, the Prince of Wales confronted Camilla in a fiery showdown, putting direct pressure on King Charles. The royal family was plunged into a severe internal rift as Charles was forced to choose between shielding his wife or saving the monarchy's reputation. Yet in a decisive twist, Catherine unexpectedly refused to attend the broadcast, leaving Camilla to face millions of viewers entirely alone. What did William hold over King Charles that left the monarch with no choice but to force Camilla to bow to Catherine? And what secret did Catherine uncover that allowed her, through sheer silence, to completely upend the royal balance of power? The crimson light of the camera in the Buckingham Palace drawing room flickered to life, marking an unprecedented milestone in the media history of the United Kingdom. As the clock struck exactly 8 in the evening, millions of people across the globe remained glued to their television and phone screens, anxiously awaiting a crucial message from the monarchy. Typically, special live broadcasts of this nature were reserved for major national addresses by King Charles III, a monarch who ruled with caution, always striving to preserve feudal dignity. Tonight, however, the familiar silhouette of the king was entirely absent. In his stead, the figure seated before the lens was Camilla, the Queen of England. To comprehend the sheer weight of this moment, one had to look back at the turbulent journey of the woman now occupying the position of matriarch of the realm. Once the target of fierce public backlash for decades before her official marriage to Prince Charles in 2005, Camilla had spent half her life in patient endurance, painstakingly rebuilding her image in the eyes of the public. She possessed no illustrious royal lineage, yet she wielded a sharp wit, immense patience, and an invisible network of fiercely loyal allies behind the scenes at Clarence House. Emerging from a figure of deep skepticism, she had ascended to the throne as queen, a position that once seemed entirely unshakable. Yet now that very pride was fracturing right before the eyes of the public. Seated opposite the television lens, Queen Camilla appeared in a regal blue gown, an ancient brooch pinned to her chest, but the magnificent attire could not conceal the tension dominating her features. Her hands, which usually maintained an air of noble poise, trembled slightly, her fingers gripping the text laid out on the mahogany desk. Her voice, carrying the characteristic rasp of a woman who had weathered life, echoed through the audio system. But this time, it bore none of the authority of a sovereign. Instead, it held a stifled catch, a profound reluctance cloaked in a fragile layer of manufactured emotion. She began to read the public apology addressed directly to Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Catherine, the king's eldest daughter-in-law, had long been the living symbol of perfection and the gold standard of the modern royal family. Ever since her 2011 wedding of the century to Prince William, Catherine had gradually captured the hearts of the public with her poised, radiant smile and untiring devotion to national duty. She was the archetype of an ideal future queen, scandal-free, always impeccable, and capable of soothing crowds with her natural empathy. The meteoric rise of both Catherine's prestige and public adoration over the past few years had inadvertently created an invisible pressure on the older generation, particularly within a palace where power was always measured by media attention. As the formal words of apology spilled from Camilla's lips, each syllable ringing out heavily, the whole of Britain seemed to fall into a state of collective shock. Public opinion surged, and social media erupted with millions of discussions within every single second of the broadcast. This was an act completely unconstitutional by the unwritten principles of Buckingham Palace, an institution that had always operated under the maxim of never complain, never explain. For a reigning queen to humble herself and publicly apologize to a subordinate princess on national television was an event unparalleled in the centuries-long history of the House of Windsor. Looking into Camilla's sorrowful and somewhat evasive eyes, before the camera observers saw no trace of a heartfelt repentance, but only a bitter bow to an immense crushing pressure from behind the scenes. Every slight nod of her head, every choked pause between the Queen's words exposed a fierce internal conflict between the pride of a ruler and the obligation to diffuse a crisis that directly threatened the survival of the Crown's prestige. The entire nation began to hurl relentless questions. What had truly transpired behind the thick stone walls and closed doors of Buckingham Palace? What force or which individual possessed enough power to compel a woman as influential and resilient as Camilla to accept such a massive public humiliation? Before all her subjects, rumors began to spread like wildfire, pointing toward a fierce covert power struggle between two generations of royal women within the palace. The moment the light of the central camera died out was the exact moment the veil of secrecy over the royal palace began to lift. The true cause did not originate from this shocking evening. It had been smoldering for months, born from silent rifts, cold glances, and sharp words exchanged within the solemn drawing rooms where the balance of power had begun to shift away from the old guard and toward a new future. The rift within the royal family did not erupt into loud arguments. Instead, it eroded the atmosphere through cold silences and highly calculated maneuvers. As Catherine's influence continued to expand, spreading from her sustainable charitable foundations to the fervent affection of the public, whenever she appeared, the air inside Buckingham Palace seemed to grow increasingly suffocating for Queen Camilla. Every crisp round of applause out there for the Princess of Wales served as an invisible yet profound reminder of the fading status of the woman occupying the position of matriarch. Catherine's poised patience and impeccable demeanor inadvertently turned Camilla's sharp wit into something abrasive and out of tune in the eyes of the media. The climax of this simmering tension finally surfaced during a private gathering in the palace tea room, a solemn space usually reserved only for intimate family conversations. Amid the delicate clinking of bone china teacups and the quiet drift of steam, Camilla could no longer maintain her usual endurance. Looking at her daughter-in-law, seated opposite her, with a confident yet entirely proper bearing, a sense of insecurity mixed with wounded royal pride prompted the Queen to unleash sharp-cutting words, undermining Catherine's background and dismissing her dedicated efforts as mere cheap ploys to win over the public. Instead of showing anger, Catherine merely tightened her fingers silently around her porcelain cup, her gaze lowering, choosing to receive the assault with an absolute and proud silence. However, that endurance pushed Prince William past his limit, standing by and witnessing his wife being demeaned within a space that was supposed to be her safest haven. The fury of the heir to the throne ignited, breaking through all boundaries of daily protocol. Disregarding the strict hierarchy, William stepped forward, shielding Catherine, and directly confronted the Queen with fierce, definitive words in defense of his wife. His stern gaze and resolute stance acted like a bucket of cold water thrown straight at Camilla's pride, instantly freezing the atmosphere in the room. Following that incident, Catherine still chose to comport herself like a true guardian of the dynasty. She did not complain to the media, nor did she seek pity, but quietly continued to fulfill her royal duties with an astonishing devotion, as if the storms within the citadel walls had never even touched her. Yet Catherine's silence did not make her adversaries back down. Only a few days after the internal conflict took place, a media storm suddenly battered the Princess of Wales in the most sophisticated manner. A flurry of classified documents from anonymous sources was continuously leaked to leading tabloids. Pages of text and meticulously staged screenshots of emails painted a portrait of a completely different Catherine, a deeply ambitious woman, silently establishing a network of allies and manipulating the decisions of senior members to seize power and isolate the king's office. Every cold line of accusation appearing across the front pages felt like a fatal blow aimed directly at the flawless image Catherine had painstakingly built over more than a decade. Confronted with the greatest reputational crisis of her life, observers saw a Catherine who still kept her back perfectly straight when appearing in public, but deep within her eyes, a grueling psychological warfare had truly begun. Her reputation, her future, and the very stability of the monarchy now stood before a vital ordeal where the line between a beloved icon and a traitor to the crown was separated by a mere hair's breadth. No matter how devastating the media storm raged, it could not shake the composure of those at the center of the crisis. The moment the dark accusatory documents surfaced, a race against time was covertly launched behind the closed doors of Kensington Palace. Top security experts and Prince William's loyal legal team jumped into action, turning over every page of the files and analyzing every piece of digital metadata to trace the origin of the dossier. The forensic results were delivered swiftly. The entirety of the evidence accusing Catherine of power manipulation was a product of sophisticated fabrication, consisting of forged emails generated from masked IP addresses designed solely to destroy the reputation of the Princess of Wales. The truth was exposed so rapidly that the smear campaign backfired spectacularly before it could even suffocate public trust. Instead of turning their backs, the British public, who had harbored a special affection for Catherine for over a decade, instantly sensed something amiss in these overly extreme allegations. A wave of support for Catherine surged like a rising tide across the front pages and social media. The image of a composed wife and mother, patiently enduring injustice without a single word of complaint, only heightened the public's deep respect for her. Public opinion shifted at a dizzying speed. People stopped questioning Catherine's integrity and instead directed their outrage and suspicion toward the palace interior, demanding to know the identity of the craven individual who had orchestrated this dirty charade. Meanwhile, Prince William's anger had evolved from an explosive outburst into a cold, dangerously decisive resolve. To him, this was no longer a standard family dispute, but a direct assault on his own household, on the woman he had sworn to protect at all costs. Detailed investigative reports from the Royal Security Forces continuously flooded William's desk. Every connection, every trace of covert financial transactions, and every secret communication pointed to one single destination: the tight-knit circle of advisors and the most loyal media aides of Queen Camilla at Clarence House. Staring at the list of names clear upon the paper, William felt a profound sense of betrayal from the very people sharing the same royal roof. Suspicion enveloped every corridor of the palace, turning casual encounters between family members into suffocating moments. William refused to allow himself to hesitate any longer. He knew that silence at this juncture meant complicity with malice. With his hands tightly gripping the thick folder of evidence and his eyes flashing with the resolve of a future king, William strode down the solemn hallways, heading straight for the office of King Charles III. He had made up his mind the king had to adjudicate, and Catherine's honor had to be restored in the most fitting manner possible, even if the price to pay was an irreparable fracture within the dynasty. The black leather-bound dossier lay silent yet heavy upon the oak desk in King Charles's private office. Prince William stood tall, his countenance as cold as ice, his fingers tapping lightly against the leather casing as a stark reaffirmation of the irrefutable evidence within. Beside him, Princess Anne, his paternal aunt, renowned for her strict rectitude, sharp reason, and status as the family's bedrock of spiritual support, stood silently, with crossed arms, her piercing gaze directed straight at the king. The united appearance of both the heir to the throne and the monarchy's most devoted princess exerted an invisible, suffocating pressure that enveloped the solemn space of the room. King Charles looked at the file, then back at his eldest son, who was consumed by a blend of intense resentment and a fierce determination to protect his wife. The king slowly removed his reading glasses, his liver-spotted hands trembling slightly as he confronted the cruel reality. Princess Anne's resolute backing of William pushed the monarch into an exceptionally precarious position on the chessboard. As a husband, he understood Camilla's loyalty and her long-standing efforts. Yet as a sovereign bearing the weight of an entire dynasty's prosperity, he could not turn a blind eye to the swelling wave of public fury outside. The prestige of the British royal family, built entirely upon the trust and reverence of its people, was shaking violently under the weight of these craven internal schemes. The days that followed were for King Charles a succession of long, sleepless nights, filled with agonizing inner conflict. He paced quietly through the vacant rooms of Windsor Castle, the monarch's silhouette seeming to wither beneath the sheer weight of the crown. On one side lay his personal affection for the partner who had walked with him through decades of turbulent storms. On the other stood his supreme responsibility to the throne and the future of the House of Windsor, which William and Catherine directly embodied. If he continued to shield Camilla, the king would render himself an accomplice in the eyes of the public, plunging the monarchy into an inescapable crisis of faith. Catherine's serene, magnanimous composure throughout these days contrasted sharply against the calculating shadows cast from Clarence House, served as the final psychological weight that forced the king's hand. After days of rigorous deliberation, during a late afternoon, as the twilight settled over the stained glass windows, King Charles arrived at a heartbreaking yet mandatory decision. He signed the decree approving a special broadcast, wherein Queen Camilla would have to answer to the entire nation. This decision cut through all justifications like a knife forcing his wife to face the gravest humiliation of her royal life. Immediately, a covert broadcast plan was set in motion. Royal television technicians were deployed into the palace under strict surveillance, and every stage of preparation, from lighting and camera angles to the written script, was rigorously vetted in absolute silence. The atmosphere within the palace sank heavy with the premonition of a violent gale about to sweep through the dynasty. The atmosphere within the drawing room of Buckingham Palace on the evening of the broadcast was so suffocating that even the sound of breathing felt heavy. The absence of the Princess of Wales dealt a severe blow to Queen Camilla's pride. Previously, a proposal for a joint appearance by the two most powerful women in the dynasty had been floated as a reconciling solution to appease public opinion. However, Catherine had definitively refused. She chose to remain at Kensington Palace, withdrawing from the television lenses to cede the entire space to the person who had initiated the warfare. This quiet yet resolute refusal inadvertently pushed Camilla into absolute solitude, forcing her to face the judgment of millions of viewers completely alone. As the clock counted down to the live broadcast, Camilla sat motionless in her familiar mahogany chair, the intense studio lights glaring directly at a countenance that, despite heavy makeup, could not conceal the etched lines of bitterness. Her hands, adorned with the royal wedding band, tightly gripped the white pages encased within the leather folder. Every passing second felt like a hammer striking the soul of a woman who had spent half her life climbing to the pinnacle of power, only to now use her own voice to humble herself before a subordinate daughter-in-law. The pride of a queen was being choked by the obligation to salvage the prestige of a shaking dynasty. The red light on the camera flickered to life. Camilla began to read the prepared apology. Her voice echoed through the speaker system at times, raspy at times, caught in her throat, not from genuine emotion, but from a surge of humiliation rising in her chest. Word by word, syllable by syllable, her admission of error and deep regret for the pain inflicted upon Catherine was broadcast, sending a shockwave rippling across the United Kingdom. Camilla's slight nod of the head before the lens carried no sense of magnanimity or repentance. Instead, it fully exposed a profound reluctance, a bitter submission to the pressure of justice and the will of the people. While the Queen was enduring the worst moments of her royal career, the media and social networks outside had already begun to explode with an onslaught of questions piercing into the true nature of the repentance. People did not merely focus on what Camilla said. Instead, they directed their attention to Catherine's highly symbolic absence. The choice by the Princess of Wales to remain silent, refusing to appear to receive the apology or to issue any retaliatory statement, proved to be a masterclass in psychological maneuvering. In the eyes of the public, her image was instantly elevated into a symbol of generosity, a woman standing far above the craven schemes of the court. She had no need to speak out in her own defense. That very silence had become the sharpest weapon, cementing her righteousness and her unshakable status in the hearts of the people. The moment the program director signaled the end of the broadcast and the red light on the camera died out, the drawing room instantly plunged into a deathly silence. Camilla sat still for a few seconds, her shoulders trembling slightly, before she dropped the papers onto the desk. Without a single word of farewell to the technical crew, she stood up using what little remained of her pride to keep her back straight and silently hurried out of the studio. The click of the Queen's heels against the stone floor along the solemn corridor sounded solitary and heavy, leaving behind a melancholy atmosphere as a tempestuous new chapter of royal history officially unfolded. Following the historically shocking live broadcast, the morning papers across London ran massive, bold headlines in unison. Yet the true focal point of the nation's scrutiny did not belong to the woman who had spoken, but was reserved entirely for the one who had chosen to withdraw into the shadows. The British media, ranging from the sharpest tabloids to the most conservative broadsheets, expressed a profound and collective reverence for the Princess of Wales's magnanimous and noble composure under fire. Front-page editorials analyzed the deep symbolism behind her choice. The vivid image of Catherine, disregarding the opportunity to witness her adversary humble herself, offering not a single word of public grievance or low-level retaliation, instantly became heralded as the new gold standard for modern royal decorum. In stark and brutal contrast, Queen Camilla bore the brunt of the heaviest, most unforgiving wave of public criticism since she had first married into the royal household over 20 years prior. The fragile veneer of prestige she had painstakingly built over 2 decades of public service dissolved into thin air in a matter of hours, plunging her into a state of total suffocating isolation amidst the solemn echoing walls of the palace, where even the staff seemed to look away. Meanwhile, within the quiet sanctuary of Kensington Palace, Prince William looked over the morning articles praising his wife's grace with an unconcealed sense of pride and relief. Sitting at his study desk, he knew that his resolute decisions, his refusal to back down, and his intense firmness in pressuring the king during their private standoff had been entirely justified. For William, protecting his wife's honor was never just a domestic matter. It meant actively safeguarding the very future and moral authority of the throne, asserting a decisive, transparent new generation of leadership that would simply tolerate no dark schemes or backroom conspiracies. Concurrently down the road at Buckingham Palace, King Charles sat silently at his massive desk, his hands resting on unanswered correspondence as his pensive gaze drifted out toward the sweeping, rain-slicked courtyard. The recent internal upheaval had shattered any remaining illusions, bringing the aging monarch to a clear, undeniable realization: Catherine was the true custodian of the monarchy's survival, the only individual who held the key to the hearts of his subjects, and the sole element capable of delivering long-term faith continuity and stability to his troubled reign. This fundamental shift in the king's perception quickly precipitated a quiet, meticulous, yet incredibly powerful realignment within the hidden architecture of royal power distribution. Crucial national duties, patronage of strategic charitable foundations, and high-profile state receptions for visiting foreign heads of state began to be progressively and systematically transferred away from Queen Camilla's office, redirected straight into the hands of the Household of Wales. Behind palace doors, senior courtiers quickly adjusted to the new reality, as the influence wielded by William and Catherine in all royal policy-making and long-term planning grew ever larger, rendering the young couple's constitutional status more unshakable than it had ever been before. Camilla, though she still bore the grand title of Queen and wore the historic crown at state openings, was effectively reduced to a faint ceremonial shadow at official events, having completely lost her voice, her leverage, and her allies in the critical internal family councils that decided the destiny of the firm. At the ultimate conclusion of this bloodless covert warfare, Catherine had no need to deliver any bitter retorts to the press, nor did she ever have to overtly vie for status across the front pages of the tabloids. Yet her victory over the old guard was absolute. Through her very grace under immense pressure, her unwavering devotion to her family, and her absolute integrity, she had won the exclusive fierce loyalty of the nation's people, transforming herself into an irreplaceable spiritual pillar of the entire dynasty. The balance of power within the ancient walls of Buckingham Palace had now officially shifted, tilting decisively and permanently toward the Prince and Princess of Wales. A distinct new era for the House of Windsor had officially commenced, a chapter of royal history defined not by abdication or tragedy, but by a smooth, quiet, yet total transfer of operational power, signaling the brilliant, resilient future of a new reigning generation. After watching this story, in your opinion, was Catherine's silence and magnanimity the wise choice of a future queen, or was it actually the sharpest weapon that helped her achieve absolute victory in this power struggle? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.